So
I just have something to say, if it's okay, on the executive committee in the next meeting, if I can join in.
Of course.
All right,
course.
thank you, I appreciate it.
So Evelyn and Joanne, whatever you guys need me to do, Evelyn, you have my number, and Joanne, I can send you mine. So whatever you need help with, just let me know.
Okay, we don't know yet. I haven't talked to Evelyn yet. I'll have to give her a call, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, like I just said, the only thing I need is just 5 people. I did everything already, so I just need 5 volunteers.
Yeah, see, she did all the work already.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Jerry.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Luana.
make a suggestion. Since Alison is here, unless Eric's here, can we begin with Alison since she's here?
That'd be great.
Yep.
We don't have a lot of people. I've been monitoring the numbers, but
All right. Thanks, everyone. Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a care manager with SAGE, which is Advocacy and Services for LGBT Elders. I work at the Edie Windso SAGE Center, which is in Midtown, so very close to all of you. And so it would have been great to present after Linda because you know, she's going to be talking all about mental health. And kind of my focus is on what does that mean for the LGBT older adult community that I work with and who's involved in a lot of our programs. But I'll jump in and try. And then hopefully maybe her presentation, if she's able to join us, will just add to it. So let's see. Okay, all right. So yeah, I introduced myself. So, you know, this was assuming that Linda would give sort of a primer, but I can just, you know, thinking, so as I was going into this, you know, putting this presentation together, I was thinking both about general mental health in the LGBTQ older adult community and also specifically during COVID. And so, you know, I work with the SAGE community. And again, when I was first thinking about this, I said, well, what's so special? I don't know. This is just the water we swim in, right? What makes, you know, mental health unique with SAGers? And, you know, and it isn't all that different from anybody else's struggles, and also resilience I'll be talking about. So at the start of the pandemic, anxiety, fear, grief, loneliness, everybody, right? We all felt it, everybody in our community, everybody at SAGE, you know, but also determination, right? To see through just doing what we had to, right? Just as all of the city had to, seeking safety, right? It was a really important, you know, part of what makes us strong, right? How we get through and cope. And so it's not just about the struggles, it's also about how we kind of seek our community to and draw on whatever we can. Another thing that's also been really important for us to consider, and I think is going to be a long-term consideration, is people who have experienced COVID and who identify with long-haul symptoms. There's a strong mental health component of that. And so that's also an aspect that you know, has been important for us to address. So I would think that maybe Linda would touch on all of these things as well. So I think when I think about mental health, and especially with this community, I do just think of how much resilience the community has, and that, you know, I like to say it's the flip side, right, of every struggle. So some of you know, thinking back to the beginning, right? I thought about, you know, sort of two cornerstone experiences that a lot of folks reflected on was experiencing the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, right? So devastating virus, right? And then also a lot of folks at Sage are Stonewall vets. I think these are just two examples of ways that there's been sort of community trauma, right, is one way to think about it. But also those are experiences where people have been able to draw on what it means to get through something. And a lot of comparisons were being made, and often as a source of strength and a source of feeling that we will get through this, and also get ready for the grief. So then there's also individual experiences, right, that are unique to, you know, living life as an LGBTQ person. Things like coming out, right? Things like exploring one's gender, redefining life expectations, right? If you think you're gonna be a wife and then, nope, that's not gonna be my path. You know, and also something I'll touch on further is also relationships, which especially in later life, but throughout, right? Who is your family, and who do you care for, right? And who cares for you? And so I think those are all certainly unique and important to think about. And so, you know, kind of going along with what I've been saying, that, you know, LGBT affirmative mental health care, it's essential, right? We've had to refer folks for mental health support throughout this pandemic. I mean, always, right? Everybody, I think, needs mental support. I think it's essential. But, you know, what does it mean to have affirmative healthcare, mental health care? And it's not all about being LGBTQ. You don't want to just talk about that all the time, right? Actually, a lot is just normal human struggles. At the same time, all of those experiences, right, the community experiences, the individual experiences, it weaves through everything. So it shapes how you handle stress, and it shapes how you relate to others, and how that is part of how you cope with something like COVID and just mental health in general. Now let's see if this will work. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So I mentioned I work for Sage, and we have a lot of different programs. I know my slice of it better than necessarily all of it, but we have a number of Sage centers. I mentioned that I'm the care manager at Midtown. We have when we were open and when we can, you know, when we all come back, we have in-person group programming. I won't read the list, but it's a lot of, just runs the gamut, a lot of art stuff, exercise things. Congregate meals, which Jerry has been instrumental in, you know, serving dinners for I don't even know how long, but we would have up to 130 people a night, holiday parties, also a lot of on-site services, benefits counseling, legal clinic, computer center, hairstyling, lend-a-hand program where we could sign people up to have a volunteer come to their house and install a computer, right, or do something like that. And then care management is the department I'm in. We do individual case assistance. That's my role primarily. That's really about a lot of practical needs, and that is really essential for mental health too. Really can't be left out of the picture, but also, you know, emotional support too, right? It's not all about, you know, the nitty gritty. Then there's also the caregiver support program, which is pretty unique. It's not my corner specifically, but it is where the care managers work with a dyad of a caregiver and a care receiver and support both. So we have groups for caregivers, and it's a really unique program, and it's especially important with our you know, with Sage participants who have very, different relationships than one might expect, right? It's just family might look different. And then we also have SAGE VETS, which is supporting veterans, SAGE Positive, which is people who identify as HIV positive, and then also the Friendly Visitor and SAGE Connect programs, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So, just thinking about how SAGE pivoted, and I do want to try to highlight how it related to adapting to supporting mental health, especially. I will say when we shut down, it was all about the food, right? We served dinner. My biggest personal freak out was, how can we close? Everybody eats here. And how could Meals on Wheels take over all of this, right? So it was a big lift, but we kind of hobbled together until the city came up with the program they've had going strong now since, and also just making phone calls. So it was a really hands-on deck. Every staff person, I believe, every department, people are making calls to people at the SAGE centers just to say, hey, how you doing? What do you need? And that was really important to just make sure people knew we're not here, but we're here. And I think that's maybe been the theme of all of this. So we also transitioned to virtual programming, where the attendance actually has been stable or increased even over the course of the last year. We have a lot of regular programs, a lot of support groups, and there's something about that speaks to, I think, the reliability, routine, and sustainability of that it's really made for, it sort of stabilizes and creates a sense of normalcy. And then also we've tried to just continue as many of those serves as we could. We did have to lose the lend a hand program, right? For example, where somebody could escort someone from a doctor's appointment, or like I said, install a computer. So these are important losses to acknowledge. And then, also that element of serendipity, right? That we just don't walk in, bump into each other, come across each other, say, hey, what did you think about that thing, right? Care management, we've been continuing. We've gotten new folks. We've met new SAGers by phone. And, an important part of our work has been, keeping up with what's changing, sort of the emerging resources as they come up, right, with the different stimulus, et cetera. Also accurate health information. There's so much misinformation, as we all know, especially around vaccines. And I think that's absolutely an important part of mental health, right? How much stress is related to just understanding what safety means, who to trust, how to get accurate information. I don't know everything, right? But how to even just explore with somebody, what does it mean to trust information, and how can we figure out a way to maybe how to talk to your doctor, right? How to have that conversation, ask those questions that you have. I think those really came up, right? We saw how that's related, mental health and public health. Also in our caregiving program, supporting distanced caregivers, right? Where care receivers and caregivers themselves couldn't necessarily be face-to-face. And then we also had a new program called SAGE Connect that emerged from the pandemic, from the context of needing to be in touch remotely, where basically it's like a volunteer buddy system. It's volunteers from all over the country who just make weekly calls. And some people, it started as like 4 to 6 weeks, because we were like, oh yeah, we'll be back. And people have been talking to their SAGE Connect buddies ever since. And it really has, I have found it really to be important, because it's in between that sort of socialization through groups or, through people you already know. It's something consistent, reliable, but personal too. And also it's not mental health services and therapy, which can be what we kind of think of as high threshold. You need to go through referral processes, and it may not be, the Sage Connect buddy kind of fits a need where sometimes you want something kind of casual to also supplement therapy sometimes. So it was important. And then just the day-to-day, week-to-week, that's really how the last year has gone. And I think that that's just a really important part of the glue, I'd say. So, and this is, I just want to kind of tie into what the future is going to look like after this. I have my own thoughts, right? And thoughts based on work, my work with participants. What do we want to continue after this that has emerged new? This sort of tele-everything, I think, has been really helpful. Telehealth, teletherapy, groups, it's an added aspect of accessibility, as much as it's been limiting to have only video or that sort of thing for many people. Then also the social infrastructure, right? All of the safety net programs have been, I mean, I couldn't elaborate them, but there have been so many programs that we've relied on. And I do hope that there's concerted effort to continue and thoughtfully think about how that is still important. And then just the overall capacity to adapt, I think that goes back to learning resilience through an experience, a collective experience like this. So I have no sense of time now, if I went fast, if I went slow, but next month is June, so happy Pride, mark your calendars. And Sage does do a number of online programming for Pride, so yeah, but I don't know if we want to do questions now or at the very end. Let's see.
If anybody has any questions, I mean, feel free to go ahead.
I have a question. I wanted to know for Pride, especially for a lot of people that I know, they're looking for ways to connect next month for Pride. So I think they're looking specifically though for virtual programs.
Yeah.
Is there a calendar of it? Because I know that there might be different events happening at, usually it would be the different facilities that people are going to. Is anything being centralized because it's being done virtually?
So yeah, I mean, I am not directly involved in the program planning, and I don't happen to pass by all of the flyers that I normally would in person. I know that they're definitely planning Pride events and whatnot. Our calendar tends to just come out every week. Sage does have a email sign up, and absolutely welcome to sign up for that if you're not already. And that, we send that out every week, and it makes announcements of, it has a link to the weekly calendar and also events. I'm not sure exactly how it went last year. I will say, so I can definitely put the general Sage phone number in the chat and the email address, but I can also maybe send the link for the calendar so you can check that.
That would be great, because then I know a number of people who've already started talking about this. So if we can distribute it, it would help them, those who don't feel comfortable yet meeting in person.
Yeah, our virtual programs are not going anywhere for June for Pride. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some special work happening. Let's see. So I'll put those in. Also, I meant to say this at the start. I'm so far from speak for anybody, you know. I mean, I'm a care manager. I help people, right, going through this time. But I also, you know, if anybody wants to share any of their own insights or experiences, I think I also welcome that. Anything
I
that-
have a from working in the elder law area, which is part of my career as a lawyer, as well as the trust and estate section, the area. And of course, from what I've studied and read, the gay community suffers a sense often of isolation more than other communities. And it seems to me that your SAGE programs during this pandemic were probably very, very helpful with people who could not get out. It probably contributed to alleviating many feelings of isolation and a lack of connection. When I look at your website and see the people painting and things like that, the art, I'm wondering if you think in the future these programs, I mean, I can actually see someone being taught piano, you know, on online. If these programs are going to stay up where you can take them online as well as in attendance, so that, as Amber said, as people still may feel uncomfortable going out. I saw that tonight before I got on this Zoom. I was on another Zoom and people were saying, no, let's wait till September to meet, because everybody on the Zoom was over a certain age. And, you know, as we get older, there's a feeling that I don't want to catch anything. I don't want to get sick. And I was wondering to what degree your community experienced any sense of isolation. Was that an increase, a decrease because of your programs jumping in?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question and the thoughtfulness of everything you said. I think absolutely isolation and loneliness are, you know, everybody's still feeling that way. You know, it's not stopped. We haven't gotten used to it necessarily. You know, the weather helps, I guess, now, but yeah, no, I do really hope that the programs that we've done virtually have, you know, and also the Sage Connect program have been helpful in that way. And I think there definitely is an acknowledgement and recognition that this transformed accessibility for people who never made it to Sage in the first place. And I think there's, you know, I don't know what the talks are. I mean, it's changing every day, right? What reopening looks like, what technology can, you know, be changed to facilitate, but that is certainly not lost on anybody. The fact that technology made programming accessible to a lot of people. Also bringing it back to mental health, not just, you know, maybe physical illness leading someone to stay at home, but also mental health, right? People who feel completely depressed and don't want to get out of their house, even before the pandemic, right? They might have been able to jump on a Zoom call once we started them. And that's, I think, a really important component as well.
I don't know the food program also, as an attorney, when people are shy, and attorneys are shy, you can have groups of people, and just because they're professionals doesn't make them any different than the average person. Food is a wonderful social event where people get together and they exchange pleasantries. And I can remember early in my career, people used to say, look, go by the food. the food starts the conversation going. And it seems like you have an enormous amount of programs that really other organizations don't have, that, and still getting out is the main. I
Yeah.
can see it. I can see it for our own club, that
Yeah.
getting together.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I love food. I love to cook food. I love to share food. You know, I assume Jerry does too. Yeah, no, I mean, and I think I just remember viscerally just saying, how are we going to feed everybody, right? Because that is what people come for, right? I mean, yeah, people come, we open at 11, but like 5:45 is when things get started.
So how did you feed everybody? How did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, like, it was a transition. There was a lot of like trying to coordinate with the catering company to see how many meals they could do grab and go, tried to do some delivery. Eventually what got put in place is what has been going on still, which is like the citywide program that also, I mean, it's for anybody. You know, it was kind of what the schools grab and go got kind of wrapped up in as well. But it's been home delivered meals through the city. So we did some Meals on Wheels referrals. We, you know, really tried to hobble it together. You know, there were some cases where it was like, oh, you have COVID. We need to call someone to get you food right now, right? I mean, it was just, in some cases, it was just like, oh, this place called us and they have 12 bags of groceries, find 12 people today, you know. It was chaos, but it was definitely kind of a big focus.
Did it eventually be the Department of Aging getting involved, Alison?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, Department for the Aging, I mean, that's who funds the majority of our programming, and our congregate meals. And I think, right, I think now the Get Food program is through Department of Sanitation, technically. It's not garbage, but there was, I think, a funding shift and all of that, but DIFTA was very much involved in trying to make that transition happen and keep as much food going as possible. Yeah.
Is there any change that you find as a result of the pandemic experience, especially being so novel for all of us? I mean, we were all in this together.
Yeah.
And this is just one of those remarkable events in our lives that we're never going to forget. Other than the high-tech aspect that Zoom was able to help you, are there any changes that you think will become permanent changes, that, or is there any reform or anything that you learned, you know, some of the major lessons that you learned as a caregiver for such a large part of society that you can share with us?
I mean, I'm trying to think of, I mean, I think just the combination of the practical and the intangible. I mean, I think that's part of social work always. It's just this very bizarre, amorphous, really important sometimes combination of, you know, what are people's needs? I guess also not presuming what somebody's needs are going to be or how somebody is experiencing. You know, I think there's a benefit in really having that individualized work with people, because, you know, what everybody needs has been really different, right? There hasn't been a sort of one size fits all. And, you know, I guess in terms of like shifting back, I actually don't know how much like the work that I've done with people has changed per se. It's really just been, I mean, it's just adapting and hearing what is it that you're experiencing, what are the gaps that would make you feel better, feel more connected, feel more whole, feel more fed, right? And how do we figure that out? How do we find that, right? How do we make that up? So it's responsive, I guess. And there's just been a lot to adapt to. Yeah.
For lay people dealing with the elderly, and not even the elderly, one of the things that I experienced for the first time was global fear, that everywhere you looked, whether you were raising children, not raising children, whether you were a friend, everybody had, you could cut the intense fear. And I think that there was something that we could all give each other in some way. And that was a sense of connection, whether it was through the phone. I mean, I remember coloring with my next door neighbor. I colored. That didn't work too well, but we tried. We tried to play checkers. We played cards many times. And it was a constant feeling of low, besides fear, then it moved into a low grade anxiety. And here we are, how many months later? Is it 15 months already since we closed ourselves in? And we're just taking the masks off maybe now. Is there any advice that you would give us as a social worker and a care person, that if this were to happen again, that we should know when it comes to dealing with the elderly and people in need?
Again, it's this sort of the water we swim in, right? So saying, well, what's so unique? It's like, well, this is everybody, right? I guess, you know, one thing that I thought of when you were just talking was the sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, maintenance aspect, is that when we're in this for so long, it might be that every single week I call someone, they say, I feel terrible, right? And to be able to sit with that has been really important, right? To not have to change feeling terrible, but to be able to say it and to be heard. Yeah, I guess, and also recognizing too, I think two sort of, two things that I've been thinking and talking to a lot of folks about as we're sort of in this transition phase in a certain way, maybe, right, is on one hand, you know, there are a lot of folks who have grown through this, right? It hasn't been uniformly terrible. And that's actually like some kind of taboo to talk about, I think, but I think it's also really important to talk about that people have had just as many, you know, sort of changes in their lives and growth and, you know, thinking about mental health, which is for many lifelong, right? For all of us, it's lifelong. And this has been 1 year, right? And in 1 year, it doesn't mean that everybody's sort of taken a backslide, right? A lot of people have continued to grow and find ways of connecting. And I think also this period of transition is challenging. And that's another thing that I think is, I guess, also kind of taboo to talk about is, you know, we're supposed to be elated that everything's opening up, but there's actually, there's a unique kind of anxiety that is just important to recognize and name. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm vaccinated, but well, I'm not sure about that, right? And to normalize that and say, that's okay, you know, I'll wear my mask too, right? Yeah, Jerry.
So Alison, I want to thank you very much from the club. It's time for us to move on, and you've been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll share that information in the chat.
And hang on if you can, because there might be more questions at the end. And Mindy, I turn it over to you.
Sorry, Jerry, you're the host. But you're on mute now.
You're on mute.
We're going back and forth with being on mute here.
Amber, would you like to introduce?
I would love to introduce our next speaker, who is Linda Giuliani. She's the Director of Mental Health Services at Greenwich House, and she works with seniors. She's incredibly knowledgeable, and I'm so happy that she's here today to talk about not only the work that they do ordinarily, but also how COVID has influenced the work that they're doing now.
Thank you very much, Amber. And thank you, Alison, for the wonderful description of all the services through SAGE. Many of our clients go there, and Sylvia's provocative questions are great. So I'm going to start with a story, because as a therapist, that's what we do. We listen to stories. And so here's my story. In January of 2020, my friend Lee gave me this pin, and it's an owl, and said to me, I think you might need this. And Lee is the kind of man that walks into the Strand and books fly off the shelves and surrender themselves into his arms. So when he tells me, here's a pin, I think, oh, I better pay attention. And I said, this is kind of funny, because lately I'm seeing pictures of owls everywhere. And I'm an urban kid, so why am I seeing pictures of owls? I wonder what that means. And he said to me, well, you know, being a Jungian, owls are the symbol of the Roman goddess Minerva. Owls can see in the dark. And then on March 23rd, all of us sheltered in place, and people who usually feel greater comfort with a pencil were asked to use DoxyMe and to figure out how to use a computer and reach people to do therapy. Our children's safety project located at Canal Street was shut down out of concern for safety because of violence against the Asian community. And they worked from home. And in about, I think it was about October, we moved the team to 27 Barrow Street, October of last year. And we also started to work 2 days a week in person, and would go to work with masks and temperature checks and questionnaires. And a lot like SAGE, all of our other departments mobilized in a very particular way. And as I talk about this, it's very difficult to talk about trauma without traumatizing the people you're talking to. So if at any point you feel anxious, please do stop, breathe, and shake your hands, or do whatever you need to do, or pet the cat or the dog. But we did have, Greenwich House has been around since 1902. When I discovered in 1992, I thought I fell into Brigadoon, because it had so many things. It has a music school, a pottery school, senior centers. It has a methadone program, chemical dependency. And if you go to the website, you'll see all these wonderful offerings. But when I joined in 1992, I joined the AIDS mental health clinic. And what I want to say is that we cannot help but listen and hear the stories of our lives and events without looking at the lens that we're taking it in through. So we experience everything through age, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, income, education, houselessness. And when you work with someone who has lived many years, there are many chapters of experience. And when we have a current event, it will bring up the past event, and you have a bit of an amplification of feeling. So we have a client that came to us yawning and having anxiety and wondering why. And we're saying, well, you know, there is COVID. And she said, yes, but you know, I'm doing so well, and never once thought about being a child who survived the concentration camps. We have long-term survivors of AIDS. And some of them were my clients, you know, in the first chapter before I came to senior health and consultation. And how is AIDS like COVID? And how isn't it like COVID? Many of our clients are not traditional. They came to the village and were rebels, regardless of sexual orientation. They came, don't have partners, don't have children, and we are it. We are their community. But they have a relationship to their art. So what I'm trying to say is that we've been here before, and there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of fatigue, there's a lot of discovery, there's a lot of resilience, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about 1 year, you know, 2 months, 20 days later, how should I feel? And we don't have a right or a wrong way. And as a mental health professional, what I can say is, I had to look at a lot of things to sort of figure out, well, where are we now? You know, where are we? And I looked at the word disaster, thought about 9/11. We all experienced that. Some of us experienced Hurricane Katrina or Hurricane Sandy. There are different events that mark every decade that imprint on us. And a crisis is an opportunity, and things that dismember us also transform us. So what I'd like to say is, as we go forward and we walk out of our doors and we see the dance studio or the rehearsal studio that's empty, or the favorite restaurant that's closed, or the favorite store, we're going to have all kinds of mixed feelings. We're going to have excitement, we're going to have dread, we're going to have anxiety. And we are a community that lives on this strange island without palm trees that's usually on steroids all the time. And we're tough, like we're really tough. So I think that this is an opportunity to really slow down, to really allow yourself to breathe, to try to re-experience what is around you in the here and now. For the first time, I hear birds on the fire escape. Didn't really hear them before. The cars were loud. I'm on 9th Avenue in Hell's Kitchen. And to understand that the concept of disaster, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is it's to meet. Grief is to meet with disaster. It's a combination of grief and meeting with something. So as a therapist, we look out for the extremes, but it's going to be pretty natural to be irritable, to be hypervigilant, to be flat, to be isolated or not wanting to be around people, to want to be around people all the time, to want to crawl back in the womb, to want to leave New York City, not want to believe that there's a future, or want to believe there's a future. Some of our seniors came in and said at the beginning of COVID, gee, isn't my life worth saving? Because they might not want to give me a respirator. And someone said, gee, I wish I had kids. You know, I didn't get married, I didn't have kids. And, you know, I have to circle back. Did you really want them? Well, no, not really. You know, but I want someone to take care of me. Or is it too late to have sex? What about that? And we'll say, use a condom, please. And so people are looking at the next chapter, the next decade, trying to still feel like themselves, to try to find a way to come back home. And very often when you're in a state of anxiety, it really is the 5 senses, or some people say they're 8. If you're a dancer, you really like space. But music, tactile things, aroma, temperature, people say take a hot shower, hold an ice cube, breathing, walking slow. These are things that are in the here and now. Recovery will involve restoring some sense of routine, some sense of ritual, reestablishing relationship. for a lot of us who come here, we're very drawn to expressing ourselves. And so you might be a writer, or you might write for the first time, or you might dance, or you might move, or you might sing for the first time, or pick up an instrument, or be involved with theater, or do service. There's so much need, but to do service for others, or to get a cat or get a dog, or do service for cats and dogs. It's really to find a way to participate back in life in a way that feels right and not rushed. So these are some of the things that we've encountered. We did a lot of structural change with our program, and we blended the certificate of operation for the Children's Safety Project, where we deal with children ages 3 and up who are affected by trauma. And we blended it with senior health, which is those who are 60 and up, so that there would be more intergenerational care. But we really provide therapy, just therapy. We talk, we listen, and we have a psychiatrist or two that will provide medication as a tool. We also have an unusual feature of home health aides. They have been really helpful. A lot of our folks can't afford a computer. They can't afford Wi-Fi. So we got 2 ZenPads, taught these women in their 60s how to use a ZenPad. And so we would send a Zoom link to the ZenPad address, and they would go to the home and leave the tablet and start the session. And that senior would have a face-to-face audio video session with the therapist, and the home health aide would go back, pick up the ZenPad, and that's how we did it. And that's how we still are doing it. And that's a great feature, because a lot of folks who don't have family need to be escorted to and from medical appointments. The very beginning of COVID, our clients didn't want to go out, so we tried to figure out a way to bring medical services to them. If there were nurse practitioner programs that did house calls and you had good insurance, you got a visit. And if you didn't, you went to urgent care, maybe with one of our home health aides. And then things loosened up and people were able to get more care. There was a lot of grapevine, how do you get food? We heard about invisible hands. They were there for a while doing things, then they disappeared. Mom's meals, they were there for a while and they disappeared. We did grab and go lunches. We dropped them off, we picked them up. That, is a thing, an ongoing thing. But we've got to remember that we're human. And even though, there's Zoom, nothing replaces person to person. It would be mistaking a meal for what a menu is. A menu is not the meal, and Zoom is not a relationship, but it is a real damn good intermediary for now. And it's been a tough year. It's just been a tough year. And, during AIDS, there was a lot of fear. And, you saw that scapegoating of the other. And it's so, so easy when you're afraid to scapegoat anyone who's different as other. And a lot of our clients are regarded as other. And whether it's, Black Lives Matter and we're seeing violence going on, or Asian folks being abused, the minute you look at someone as other, we don't make it as a community. And so I think we really need to restore that sense of community again and allow ourselves to maybe rest in silence and quiet and being with each other and not being afraid of that. So I'm going to share something with you, because during 9/11, we all made tiles, and during COVID, it seems like we all needed poetry. So I'd like to just share something from Mary Oliver and then stop and welcome your questions. So this is a poem by Mary Oliver. I am standing, from Evidence. I am standing on the dunes in the heat of summer, and I am listening to Mockingbird again, who is tonguing his embellishments, and in the distance, the shy weed-loving sparrow who has but one soft song, which he sings again and again, and something somewhere inside my own unmusical self begins humming. Thanks for the beauty of the world. Thanks for my life. So thank you for inviting me, and I welcome any questions you may have. At Greenwich House, we are working with people. You're welcome to call us. There are some folks who may need more specialized techniques. For those for whom techniques work, there's things like DBT, CBT, EMDR, motivational interviewing, you name it, they got it. it's out there too, and it's whatever works for you. And I can give some numbers to put them in the chat, and that's how you can reach us.
So I had a question really about how do people begin the process and reach out. I've had a number of friends who have always been very active, both physically and mentally and emotionally, because they've been really engaged. And as they've gotten older, they've continued to stay active. And COVID has been devastating to some of my friends who live particularly in Brooklyn and Queens, where they didn't have a community nearby.
Yeah.
And I have watched them over the last year and a half kind of fall apart.
Yes.
And I know that they're looking for maybe a virtual community for the first time. I think they kept waiting for COVID to end and realizing now that it's not going to end the way that they had hoped. There's not going to be this abrupt transition. So if they're going to get started for the first time and they don't know yet what they need,
they can call us, and we have 2 ways to call us. We have a clinic number, which I can put in the chat. And we have an after hours cell number, which is direct, which I answer. And that's how we begin. And people can ask questions and feel it out. We did have a lot of what I like to euphemistically call life work balance reevaluation. So we had a big staff turnover during COVID, and we are rebuilding, and we are very close to almost finished. So, but yes, please call us. We have openings. There are a little bit of a delay because we're onboarding new people, and I will put that in the chat.
that would be great.
I know I experienced what I would call COVID fog.
Yes.
First, I noticed that for somebody that was up in the morning, well, I'm always up early anyway, but I'd be up at the gym. And then the day as a litigator really went very quickly. I was noticing the craziest things, like sitting on a couch at 3 o'clock and waking up at 9:30. And I never experienced such a body that needed sleep, and then forgetting things, or I mean, I would actually feel better, and it's terrible to say, but if someone else didn't remember a name or an incident, we would describe an occasion, and we were talking about the same thing, but they couldn't remember either. I would say, oh, wow, I feel much better. Oh, wow, it's not only me. It's like, you can't remember either. I mean, was that something that was so common?
Yes, yes. And it has brought out my inner sadist. This morning I said to my boss, oh my God, you look awful. You look like the way I feel. Yes. People have said, is it just me? Is it just me? I think the fog brain is really classic. And usually for me, it's a measure of being away from my real self. And I haven't done something that's more really me. And I almost can feel like one side of the brain turns off and the other one turns back on. So, I'd say to you, what is it that you have the passion about, and have you done it lately? And have you been exposed to it lately? And for one of our seniors, she said, I've been listening to Dan Fogelberg's songs. And she was playing all her favorite songs from the 60s and 70s. For some of us, it's watching terrible YouTube, nothing longer than 10 to 15 minutes, and usually some of the worst kinds of programming. So it's kind of sedating. It's a way to rest the mind, I think, from the hypervigilance, because if you're working, emails are coming at you all the time, or phone calls are coming at you all the time. Or if you're not working, it's tedious, just being at home, not sure what to do with your day because routines have been disrupted and you can't go out, and it feels strange. So that fog brain is very universal, very universal. But I do think it means you may have been away from something really you for a little bit too long. And I would invite you to look at what is that you experience. I need to dance and I write short plays, and I hadn't written a short play in a long time. And I thought, I'm gonna make soup. So I made soup. Then I did a terrible thing. I kept the chicken in the refrigerator too long, twice, and I threw out the chicken. And the guilt that I felt for the life that was killed and not eaten, I couldn't live with it. So then I wrote a short play called Headless. And I thought, aha, I'm back. I'm back in the saddle. You know, and that's the kind of thing I invite you to consider. What is the thing that makes you feel like you're back in the saddle again? You're you again. You're still you. You're still you.
I noticed recently that names that I couldn't remember at all, I was beginning to think, you know, I better write them down. And, you know, this way, if I can't remember, all I have to do is look at a paper. But as my mind became more relaxed and I found out we were going to be, well, I certainly wasn't as stuck housebound as other people were, because I'm used to working alone. So I had many advantages, but still I saw the change in myself. I noticed that there's not as much struggle with remembering. And I'm not saying, oh gosh, look at this, it's a sign of age, right, because I know it's not necessarily a sign of age. And as the mind relaxes, things are coming easier. But that fog is a scary thing.
Yeah, it's a scary thing, but it's also been everything all at once. I mean, everything all at once, you know, the media, the news, the radio, it's always like, now what? So, you know, whenever colleagues would come over to me, I have to tell you something, and they would start to preface it with, it's nothing bad. It's nothing bad. You know, I'd be like, what happened now? What happened today in the world? You know, so it's such an overload of things. But sometimes, you know, I think the media forgets to tell us the stories that are good, you know, that people are doing good with one another and for one another. That kind of drops out sometimes, you know. In my neighborhood, it's a circus. So one day I went shopping and there's a homeless man, and there's clearly a very missionary Christian person praying over him at the corner of 42nd and 9th. And I look and I go, oh God, I love the city. You know, where am I going to find someone praying over somebody on the corner of 42nd and 9th? Really, you know, but that was a moment. That was a moment, you know, and it was a sacred moment that I stumbled into between two people, you know, it meant something to them.
Follow me, be loyal. Hate.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, I'm on mute. Hi, I'm Luana. Thank you both for so much information. It was really informative. I really learned a lot from both of you. I have my mom is, so she suffers from dementia. And I found that during the pandemic, she was admitted, she fell down, she was admitted to the hospital. And then from the hospital, she went to the nursing home. And I found that in the nursing home, they had stopped a lot of activities for the patients, and which increased their dementia, and because they weren't doing anything every day. And it was really hard for us to help, because we couldn't go to the nursing home. We could only call my mother, and sometimes we couldn't get through to the nursing homes for some reason. Nobody was on the ward. It was a whole bunch of different things, but they had the patients pretty much sitting around all day with no activities. And I felt really bad for her that, you know, because one of the things they need to do is to be active, you know, have their mind do something. And I felt that the nursing home was lacking in that, even though it was a pandemic and even though there was distancing and so on and so forth, that there was something that they could do to help the patients at least interact a little bit for some way. So my mother, she suffers from dementia, but she also had trauma from her childhood, and also the loss of my brother got killed. So she has a lot of trauma besides, which probably adds to the dementia, you know. So she goes back and forth. Now she's in an assisted living facility, which gives her a little more freedom, and she's feeling a lot better and sounding a lot better. She goes back and forth sometimes, but it's so much better. They have more activities for her to do, and she's able to like do little things with the people who like go to the store and things like that. So I'm really happy about, you know, the progression, because during the nursing home time I thought she was gonna die, literally.
Yes.
And but also with that comes this angst, because sometimes we go back and forth and I forget, you know, that she has these issues with her mind, and sometimes we battle with words, you know, mother-daughter thing, and sometimes I forget about the dementia. So could you enlighten me on some tips on how to not be so I mean, I know, but I'm just like professionally speaking, how not to be so. Sometimes if I'm tired or, you know, I'm not in the mood and I just don't want to hear the excuses, sometimes I just am very hard on her. So if you can give me a few tips or suggestions on how to control my emotions.
Yeah, I got a 92-year-old, no, I think she's 95 now, a 95-year-old Sicilian aunt and senior assisted, and she survived being run over by a bus at 92 and losing her leg. And they don't make them like that anymore, because if it were me, I'd be gone. I think it's really okay to acknowledge that there are times that the people we love are hard to love. And I think that's when it's good to visit with others, or let the preferred person or the good person or the good object go in that day and you take a break. I send in my brother-in-law.
I was gonna say, I send in my brother. Yeah, my brother does the other stuff when
my aunt is old school, and if a man tells her something, she says it's great. If I say the same thing,
she does. Oh my gosh, you are kidding me. My brother can do no wrong. He can leave her for 100 years, and she will like me. I go for one day, and it's like the atom bomb fell out. You are so right.
And then I'll go in and I'll say, but you know, thank you so much for loving me so much. And that's what you do. You know, you've got to hand it to them. They survive for a reason. You know, your mom is old school, and they really don't make them like that anymore. Let someone else go in, you know, spread the love, diffuse the pressure, and acknowledge there are times that the people we love target us, and you got to protect yourself. And good for her, she survived it, and she's in a better place. It's good. That's good. Really good. You know, give yourself credit. You know, just breathe.
That was very good. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. But do let the other people do the heavy lifting for a while.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
You know.
Yeah. It's something, you know, but something that you need to validate. You know. Thanks.
She can be angry at you because she knows you're not going to leave her.
Yeah, that's right. She can make me angry, and she knows I'm going to be right back.
Right. You're not going to leave her.
It's true. And when everything hits the fan, she won't call my brother. She'll call me.
She'll call you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I also just want to put out there, whether it's helpful for you individually or for anybody else in a relationship with somebody they're supporting as a caregiver, informally or whatnot. We do have the caregiver support program at Sage, and this is exactly the purpose. Is because you as her daughter need just as much support, and that's really important. So, you know, we have groups, we have, you know, just case management help. And yeah, I guess, you know, when you were describing the conflict, I thought, well, you know, there's something stable in the authenticity of your relationship being maintained, right? You're like, oh, you're still my daughter, right? I'm sure is how she's feeling. And that familiarity is really important.
Right. Okay, thank you. I took that into your consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Actually, if everybody's okay, we'd like to turn it over to Erik now. Erik?
Hi. I'm just gonna quickly remind everybody, Erik Bottcher, he's a candidate for city council, and he's gonna tell us a little bit about his mental health plan for the city.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amber. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Jerry, and everyone else who helped put tonight together, a very important topic. And I want to thank Sage and Greenwich House for all that you do. I've got to see firsthand the big difference that you make in our constituents' lives. I've got story after story of how you've really helped people in a real way. So thank you all. And thanks for having me tonight, CRDC. It's good to see everyone here.
Hello, Erik.
And I really appreciate you having this forum. I'm going to put in the chat a link to my mental health plan. And this has really been one of the big issues of my campaign. And why did I decide to focus on this issue? Number one, it intersects with so many other issues that we deal with: housing, homelessness, healthcare, and it also is something that is personal to me. And many of you know this already, but when I was 15 years old, I spent a month in a mental health hospital following a series of suicide attempts. And something that I talk about openly, because we have to help reduce the stigma around the issue, especially for now, people who are going through this thing now. You are not alone. If you are going through tough times like this, you are not alone. And I think when people who've had these struggles share their stories, I think it's very helpful. But it's also a big reason why I'm here in this capacity and why I chose a life of public service, because it was in New York City that I found community and I found a place where I belong. And so I made the decision to dedicate my life to public service. But right now we are in the middle of what many people are calling a shadow pandemic. We've got the pandemic of COVID-19, but we've got a pandemic of mental health happening at the same time. And it runs the gamut from people just feeling blue to people experiencing serious mental illness. And what most people identify with mental illness is the most visible manifestations of it. And it's with serious mental illness. And, you don't have to go far on the streets of New York right now, sadly, to see it. And in a way, it's burst out into the open in a way that it hasn't before. It was always there, but we didn't see it like we're seeing it now. And I think it's partly because there's so few people on the streets. It's partly because a lot of the programs that are in place to address this issue are not running at full capacity. And many other reasons. So I put this plan out that I'm just going to walk you through, and I'm not going to take a lot of time because I know it's nearly 8:30, but this is 8 recommendations, 8 things that we can do. And there's many things we can do, but I focused on 8 points. And one is to stop the closure of inpatient psychiatric beds around New York State. And the New York State Nurses Association has been very vocal about this. I was on a call earlier today with CSEA, which is very vocal about this. And New York State has year over year been reducing the number of inpatient psychiatric beds in New York State. They're very expensive, these beds. So the state has been year over year, just as the population and the need have mushroomed, they've been reducing the number of beds. So I'm calling on that to stop. And any closure of beds has to be accompanied by an increase in community-based services that can serve this population, because that's the whole idea behind getting rid of inpatient beds, is to have community-based care, but we haven't invested in it. And it's part of a larger trend, of decades-long trend of, the idea was close these big hospitals that historically, warehoused people. There were good programs and bad programs. There were a lot of bad programs. They were closed, and the idea was to have a community-based system. And we did create many, many great community-based programs, but not nearly enough. Number two, we really have to immediately dispatch mobile mental health crisis teams in our district. And right now, people, when there's a call for someone experiencing a mental health crisis, the police are the respondents. And that shouldn't be, an armed individual shouldn't be the person responding to that. The mayor announced in November a pilot that took place this spring in Upper Manhattan. He announced a couple of weeks ago that it would be expanded citywide. We really need it very badly in our community, and it's an opportunity to engage folks in a clinical sense, not in a criminal justice sense, and get them connected to proper care. But we need the care. And that's where these next items come in. Crisis stabilization centers, also known as medical respite beds. When a person experiencing a mental health crisis, when they're brought to the hospital, they are frequently released as soon as they're medically stabilized. The crisis stabilization centers, or the medical respite beds, they are for people who are not sick enough to be in a hospital, but they're not well enough to be on the streets or in the shelters. Place for people to recuperate, get treatment, get connected, stabilized, and connected to services. There are a few of these centers, but not nearly enough. So we really need to create more so people aren't discharged onto the street, hospital street, hospital street, hospital street, and each time they deteriorate further. So it's something that we need more of. Supportive housing is the ultimate, is the end point in the proper continuum of care for a lot of people experiencing mental health issues. Housing, it's affordable housing with on-site services or wraparound services where they can get help with everything from making medical appointments to taking medication, recreation, you name it. But that's how people live in the community, live full lives of dignity in the community, and they're not institutionalized, hospitalized, jailed. Supportive housing, we have to create thousands of units of supportive housing. It's very difficult to create supportive housing though, because it's hard to place supportive housing. People don't want supportive housing in their community, and it's something that has made it very challenging to build supportive housing. But at the end of the day, that's how we can address the street homelessness issue and the issues that, the quality of life issues that a lot of people are concerned about. Supportive housing will make things better. The clubhouse model is a model practiced by Fountain House and Hell's Kitchen. And it's basically like a community center for people with mental illness to come and get opportunities for recreation, friendship, job opportunities, etc. We need to expand this model. We have to change the way that we do discharging for incarcerated folks. New York State has been just sending people right into the New York City shelter system with inadequate support. There's a proposal to require the state to compensate the city for individuals that it puts in the New York City shelter system. That money could be used for services, and we should really embrace the model of Fortune Society and the Osborne Association and other nonprofits that have incredible success stories helping people who are released from the criminal justice system. School-based behavioral health is a way, early intervention is really how you prevent serious mental illness, by identifying it and treating it. And our school settings are an opportunity to do that, because it's the late teens when mental illness often begins to manifest, and it's in the school where we really have an opportunity to identify. So we need to expand school-based mental health, but also have the traditional healthcare trained to make the referrals, and counselors and social workers. We should have them in all schools, and they should be trained to know how to identify the signs of mental illness and make the referral. Thrive NYC historically is a $250 million a year program, but as of 2019, only 10% of the budget was spent on people with serious mental illness. I believe it should be a higher percentage. I think that money should really be used to help the most in need New Yorkers with serious mental illness. It should not be an either or thing. We should do what we need for everybody, but the program should be redirected to help people with serious mental illness. And the de Blasio administration said that that's what they were doing before they rebranded the program. But that's the final of the 8 recommendations. One of the reasons I'm running for city council is to affect this change. I think in the richest city and the richest country in the world, it's shameful that we have people dying on the street from untreated mental illness. That's not who we are, and we have to do something about it. So I really appreciate this opportunity for having me here tonight to talk about this.
Eric, one of the problems that I've noticed in my work as an attorney dealing with the mentally ill and the elderly, which is what I do as a litigator, in addition to trust and estates, when you mention hospital and on the street, many times the judges, even before, I'll give you an example. I deal with emergency cases very frequently where people have come directly from the street with frostbite, the homeless. They're hospitalized and there's nobody in their family to make that decision as to, I mean, these are really serious and painful cases, amputations, serious mental issues that got them there in the first place. That the hospitals, they have to call in someone like myself as an attorney who is going to do the basic background in a very fast period of time, make a decision. But one of the problems with they're back on the street so fast is because they don't have any medical, they don't have any medical health. They have no health program. So
Yeah.
what happens is the hospital's attorneys bring these emergency cases. And the way I've been trying to slow them down with the judges is to say, look, let's not end this case, even though I'm being called in to make the decision or find a family member to help me. Because if a family member comes in, then it's a family member that's helping me make the decision as to what's best for them. But to call in to get the judge to say, look, these people need guardians. They need somebody who's going to come in and help to place them somewhere, get them onto Medicaid, or they're going right back on the street in the serious shape that they're in. And sometimes what happens is a judge may say, okay, look, we're not going to end this case right now. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 days or 6 days for the family to make this decision and, handle what we need. And then I want you to come back to tell me that the patient's health, because that's giving them 4 or 5 days more in the hospital. And what we find is that on that day that we come back, the attorney for the hospital says they were transferred. They're out of here. And I know why they're transferred. They're transferred because it might be $5,500 a day or $6,000 a day for them to sit in the hospital, whether they've been treated or not. And I said, well, wait a minute. That's not what you were ordered to do. You were ordered to come back and tell us how the patient was doing. And the hospital gives us a cock and bull story. And the story evolves around, well, where we've transferred them to is a satellite of our hospital. It's really not. It's the fact that they didn't have any medical insurance. That's really what it is. We've got to get them first and foremost medical insurance, because once we get them medical insurance, we can get them to another place where they can have treatment.
Mhm.
We don't, without that ability to bring a proceeding where the courts are involved and somebody who's an attorney or someone who's a social worker has the requisite knowledge to sign these people up for Medicaid and the requisite New York State insurance, the hospitals won't be throwing them out so fast, and we'll be able to put them into some kind of program that can help them, because it's a medical emergency, a mental emergency. And they don't think that we're smart enough. I'm smart enough to see it, to alert a judge, look, this is what I think we've got to do.
I mean, you just identified a lot of flaws in various different systems, primarily our healthcare system, where, if you've got insurance, like private insurance, and not even all insurance, it has to be like really, really good insurance. You have a chance at getting some of the treatment to help you. And if you don't, some of the best programs are just out of reach. And then, civil liberties is a very complicated area. How do you balance civil liberties against what's best for a person and their family and society? So it's really complicated stuff. And, there's a lot of room for improvement, because it's failing the poorest New Yorkers, particularly.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Luana, you have a quick question?
I'm sorry. You know, I always said it. I try not to hold it back. I try to hold it back. But
Luana,
really-
just so you know, we have a presentation at 8:45 that we have a teen youth organizer coming on with us. So after Luana, if we could then move on to Tiffany, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for everything that you said is so true. So I'm just going to cut to the chase. In this society today, there's so much of this homelessness, mental illness going on. It's not just in New York City, it's in California, it's in Washington, Seattle. If you look at the homeless population in those areas in California, Venice Beach, San Diego, in Seattle, Washington, it's a worldwide problem. And I remember as a youth, really quickly growing up, and the Chelsea Projects and the Hudson Guild had so many different programs. I mean, we were able to have a social worker that followed us all through our high school, junior high school and high school years. And they stayed in touch. They were very familiar with the family. There were programs to go to camp, go to the theater, go to, you know, do different things to keep us busy as youth. I mean, we got in trouble, but not as much trouble. But what I'm saying, like the social aspect of government, not that government should always do everything, that we, the people, should be doing things, but the nonprofit organizations that exist today only can do but so much. And since we have gotten away from really the social issues of caring for one another, the ramifications of what we see now is what we see. Those things like always existed, but the thing is that we had so many different distractions that we weren't able to see it. So when everything sort of shut down, then these things came out into the open, but technically they were always there and always growing. So I appreciate what you're saying. I don't think defunding the police is the thing to do. It's what happened to the philanthropy, the caring of the, you know, those that had for those that didn't have, those kinds of things. So I think we need more supportive services from the people that can support, you know, and with whatever we do with our time or whatever can help. But like you said, and since the pandemic, mental illness, sitting with yourself, learning about yourself or your mate, sometimes that is traumatic for people. And so, I mean, there is so much that came out of this pandemic. It's a learning experience. It's not something that we should shun or be you know, angst about. Is something that we learn because in our humanity, we were distracted by a lot of things. So
Eric, I have a question for you about, this is about things that are actionable that we can do. And I know Tiffany's coming on in a few minutes, but I really thank you for sharing your own story. I think that, you know, I was in high school when I had a number of friends who took their own lives. And I remember saying, you know, I mean, we had sex education while we had a number of friends who had already had kids, that we had a number of people who were taking their own lives. Nobody was addressing the mental health component to what could be a curriculum. How come we're not talking about mental health as part of the school curriculum? Getting people to self-identify. We're waiting until they are showing symptoms that are obvious to other people before we're connecting with them. And I really love your plan, and I love the fact that you're focusing on younger people, because you're right. This very often is the time, maybe when people are identifying and seeing it in themselves even. And
yeah, thank you for raising that, because I was actually on a seminar 2 weeks ago by the Samaritans, which is the Samaritans hotline. It's like one of the main hotlines for people in crisis. And they had a speaker talking about suicide among kids, like young kids. And it was really eye-opening to me how young some young people experience like suicidal ideation. And you know, in terms of like, and he was talking about how to talk about it with kids, and that's tough stuff. I really respect educators a great deal for having to address topics like this. but it's important that we know how to do that and know what to do and know what not to do.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Hi, Diane.
Hi. Can I say something? I also, well, I think something like the mental health plan is enormously important because, as you said, it touches on homelessness and touches on poverty, touches on joblessness sometimes. I also think that the general public needs to be educated more about, what mental instability, what it means. And if they had a little bit more education about it, perhaps it would be more support. It would gain more support, and it would and if people realize that many times one thing clicks onto another thing, just like a chain. Instead of just looking at someone, oh, they're homeless, they lost their job, oh, they must be a drunk, or they're a bum, or something. Not knowing all the things that everyone has a different story, of course, but I think the public just needs to. I'll bring up a very quick story. About a week and a half ago, for instance, I was walking up 8th Avenue, a man standing on the corner next to me. He was just standing there, and he was yelling like, fuck. Wasn't aggressive, he wasn't mean or anything. I was fishing around in my bag for some. Anyway, he got ahead of me, and he just kept going down the street, screaming the F word, every few seconds. There are these two construction guys off to the side on the Meridian, and they started like taunting him. They started cursing back to him, and trying to, they were just basically taunting him. And I called. I said, "Look, he's not bothering you. The man can't you see? He's in pain. He's out of his mind. Leave him alone." And they kind of just stood there. But I think there's an insensitivity where that really bothered me. But it's and the man wasn't bothering him, but he was clearly had issues. Maybe he didn't take his medication. But I think educating the public about the issue is very important.
Agreed.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, and again, thank you, Linda, Alison, and Eric for speaking this evening and answering everyone's questions. But like I just left a message, we have a special guest, Tiffany. She's from Rank Choice Vote New York City, and she's a youth organizer, and she had reached out to us and wanted to do a presentation on ranked choice voting. So
yeah,
take
hello
it over
everyone. Like Mindy said, my name is Tiffany. I work as the Youth in Manhattan organizer for Rank the Vote NYC. We're a nonpartisan pro-democracy voter education initiative. And I really appreciate y'all having me here tonight. I'm gonna go over a quick 10 to 15 minute presentation with y'all on ranked choice voting. As you might be aware, New York City is gonna be using ranked choice voting for the first time this June primary. So just, I'm gonna introduce the concept to y'all, show you how to fill out a ballot. And we're actually gonna have a mock ranked choice election just so y'all can see how it works in practice. So the mock election we're gonna do is what New York City Park is the best, which is a very important issue, of course. So if you're interested in participating, you can click the link I just posted in the chat. It'll ask for your email. You absolutely don't need to put in your email. And I am going to share my screen now so that y'all can see this presentation that we are going to do. Can y'all see my screen? Great. So first off, and let me minimize that just so y'all can see. First off, I want to give a quick timeline for ranked choice voting. I know some of y'all might be familiar. This might be new to others. So in 2009, there was this costly low turnout runoff election for public advocate and comptroller, which prompted a debate over the use of runoff elections. In 2010, Councilmember Gil Brewer introduced the first ranked choice voting bill. And between 2010 and 2018, both charter revision commissions explored RCV, ranked choice voting RCV for local elections, but concluded that they needed more time to make a decision. In 2019, y'all may have remembered if you voted in 2019 that there was a question on the referendum on whether we should adopt ranked choice voting or not. And it passed overwhelmingly with 75% of the vote. And 2021, again, in the June primary, the city is going to be having our first RCV elections. The reason that ranked choice voting is a good thing for this city is two things. First, that because of our very robust campaign finance system and the implementation of term limits, in many elections across the city, we have a wealth of diverse candidates who, under the current system, would risk splitting the vote. And under the I should say, past system of voting, before ranked choice voting, members were elected just with a plurality, meaning that a candidate could win with as little as 20% of the vote. So often you'd see in a city council race, for example, there'd be a bunch of candidates. One would kind of inch ahead in front of the rest and win the election, but actually have a small degree of, or a relatively small degree of the votes that were cast. And what's changing is how in ranked choice voting, there are no runoffs, and candidates will need to win at least 50% plus 1 of the vote. And voters will have the options to rank up to 5 candidates, which includes write-ins, if they choose. You are not mandated to rank 5 candidates in total. Your ballot's not going to be thrown out if you don't rank 5, but we encourage people to rank 5 so your vote can have the most impact. Some important dates. The last day to register to vote is May 28th. The last day to change your address, if you're registered, is June 2nd. So make sure to do that if you haven't already. Early voting starts Saturday, June 12th and ends Sunday, June 20th. And of course, election day is Tuesday, June 22nd. So to give a more kind of in-depth description of how ranked choice voting works, imagine that you're voting in the June primary and you want to know how do I pick my first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choices. Your first choice, as you can probably imagine, is the candidate you love, the candidate you want to win in the first place. Your second choice is the candidate that you like. Maybe, for example, if you have a first choice that you worry doesn't have enough popular support to get elected, maybe your second choice is your kind of safe option. Your third and fourth choice is the candidate you like slightly less, but would still be happy if they won. The fifth candidate is the candidate you don't despise, a candidate you can stand. Something important to keep in mind is, some people think that if you rank a candidate 5, it's going to hurt them. That's actually not true at all. If you don't like a candidate, don't put them on your ballot, because putting a candidate number 5 can actually only help them. And I'll go into why that is when we do the when I show you all the results of the mock election. So we put together this video that explains what I'm talking about, hopefully illustrates it pretty clearly.
We don't hear any sound.
You don't hear any sound?
I didn't hear any, no.
Okay. Let me try, if I take my headphones off. Let's see if this works.
Hi, I'm Mahir.
Can y'all hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
But not now.
Yes.
Great.
Welcome to my bodega. As you may know, New York City has a new way to vote special and primary elections. So, how does ranked choice voting work? The next time you vote in a city election, instead of choosing just one candidate, you can rank them all from your first choice to your fifth. Here's how it works. Let's say my bodega is picking its featured snack of the month. So many choices. Which one should I feature? This customer ranks Parker pretzels as her top favorite. She also ranks her second choice, Mr. Chips, third choice, Chicharrones, fourth choice, Gladys Gummies, and fifth choice, Puppy Popcorn. Other customers rank their choices as well. If Parker Pretzels is the favorite choice and wins more than 50% of all the first ranked choices, then Parker Pretzels is the winner and is featured as the snack of the month. However, if no snack gets more than 50%, then the least popular snack is eliminated. Sorry, Figgy Bars. The remaining second ranked choices from customers who chose Figgy Bars are redistributed. So if customers chose chips and chicharrones as second choices, then those two snacks receive additional votes. The new totals are counted and the process repeats until there's a winner of the final two. Congrats, Puppy Popcorn, you're the bodega snack favorite. Back in the real world, before it's time to vote for humans, visit rankthevotenyc.org for more information. Thank you, New York City, for voting and for making these special and primary elections your elections.
So hopefully that made what I'm talking about a little bit more clear. And now I'm going to show you all the results of the mock election that Rank the Vote is running. So you can see here, 463 people have voted so far in all of our trainings. And that means that the 50% plus one threshold, again, that's the threshold you need to win in a ranked choice election, is 232. And you can see here, Prospect Park is winning with 140 first choice votes. Central Park is right behind with 129 first place votes. And all the way down until the bottom choice, which is Clove Lakes in Staten Island, which only got 4 votes. If this were a non-ranked choice voting election, we would end it here. But because it is a ranked choice voting election, the bottom option, as you saw in the video, is actually going to be eliminated, and those votes are going to be redistributed to whoever picked Clove Lakes. Their votes are going to be redistributed to their second choice. So you can see, actually everyone who picked Clove Lakes, their second choice was High Rock Park. So that went up a little bit from, and now has 11. And the process continues with each, with the votes being redistributed each round. The bottom gets eliminated. See here, so High Rock Park also got eliminated. We saw that everyone who picked Clove Lakes picked High Rock Park as their second choice, which makes sense because Staten Island. So those people, now their votes are going to be, it's their third, whoever they picked for their third choice is going to get those votes now that both of those, both their first and second options have been eliminated. And you see we keep going, keep eliminating the bottom option. Now Central Park has actually gotten in front of Prospect Park. In the beginning, Prospect Park was winning. Now Central Park is. Prospect Park jumps ahead once again. But in the final round, Central Park wins with the final two being Prospect Park and Central Park. Something interesting in this election, though, is you'll notice that they actually don't reach that 50% plus one threshold, which again is 232. Central Park gets very close, but is not quite there. So what happens then? What happens then is this triggers what's called a counting round, which means every vote gets counted, and the ranked choice process continues until you have 2 options left, and whichever of those options gets the majority of redistributed votes wins. So in this case, that's Central Park, between Prospect Park and Central Park. So Central Park is if we called this election today, Central Park would win. Get back to the presentation. Sorry. So this is what your ballot is going to look like. Obviously, these candidates are fake, but you see you got candidates here, you got your choices here. Counting rounds, again, if no candidate receives that 50% plus one, the official winner is not declared until all votes are counted, including early election day affidavit, and absentee votes. And round by round vote totals will be released to the general public. A counting round is only necessary, again, if no candidate receives 50% plus one. If in the election we just saw, say Central Park managed to get in one of the rounds that 50% plus one, then Central Park would win. But it didn't, so we had to go through the whole process. Why should voters use their rankings? So again, like I said before, your vote isn't going to be thrown out if you don't rank all 5. But we encourage people to use all your rankings because you have more choice and more power. It means that even if your favorite candidate doesn't win, you still have a say in who is elected. You can vote your conscience without worrying that you're wasting your vote. In non-ranked choice voting elections, of course, say you like a candidate that doesn't have a lot of support. You might worry, oh, if I vote for them, I'm throwing away my vote. You don't have to worry about that now because if that candidate you vote for first gets eliminated, whoever you picked second, third, fourth, and fifth, your votes get redistributed to them. And ranking a candidate second, third, etc. will never hurt your favorite candidate. In the example we just saw, say I'm a big fan of Prospect Park, but I also like Central Park. So say I vote for Prospect Park first, and then my second choice is Central Park. Me picking Central Park second is not hurting Prospect Park at all. So definitely, again, feel free to use those second, third, fourth, and fifth rankings. Some frequently asked questions, and then I'll turn it over to y'all in case y'all have questions. How many candidates do I rank? You can rank up to 5, as many or as few as you'd like. Do you use all 5? Your vote isn't going to get thrown out once again if you only rank 1 or a couple, but I encourage that y'all do. Sorry, my cat's meowing in the background. Can I rank a candidate more than once? No, you cannot, and it doesn't help your favorite candidate to rank them more than once. Doesn't hurt your favorite candidate, again, to have a second, third, fourth, or fifth choice. And just some ranked choice voting essentials to remember. By ranking, because of the ranked choice voting system that we have now and are going to be using in the June primary, voters don't need to worry about wasting your vote. You don't have to worry, again, if you vote for someone who you worry doesn't have a lot of popular support, accidentally helping elect someone that you don't support, splitting the vote, or someone being elected with less than a majority. You'll remember at the beginning, before in the old system, a candidate for city council could win with as little as 20%. In this case, candidates actually have to demonstrate a much larger degree of community support. And just some contact info here. You can go to rankthevoteny.org to find out more information. You can also download this training from the website if you want to go over it. If there's something you forget that want to check later, you can email or call us. Check us out on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And yeah, I will stop sharing my screen now and see if y'all have any questions.
Okay, if there is no questions, thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you.
I also, once again, thank you to Linda, Allison, and Eric, and Amber, and Jerry, of course, for putting together such a wonderful program. And this is being recorded, so you know, I think there's, with all the races and all the organizing groups and everything, everybody's, I guess, spread thin with which meeting that they go to at any given moment. So our membership will still have the opportunity to, view this. And I'd like to thank our execs, and thank you, District Leader Sylvia and District Leader 2B Charles. And you can all unmute yourself and we could talk.
Great program, everybody.
Is
Very
Tiffany
important.
still- is
Thank
Tiffany
you so
still
much
here?
for being here tonight.
Yes, Tiffany is still here.
Tiffany, this explained it a little bit better. No matter where I go, people have a problem with ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how number 2 becomes number 1? Because a lot of our candidates are saying, look, if you don't consider me for number 1, would you please consider me for number 2? So I've seen it where I've heard discussions how number 2 became number 1, but with the algorithm or however it's used, how does number 2 become number 1?
No, that's a really great question. So if your first, so you rank 1 to 5. If your first gets eliminated, your votes then go to second. How candidates get eliminated is the candidate with the least amount of votes gets eliminated until you either have 2 candidates left or until one of them reaches 50% plus 1. So in the mock election I showed you all with the parks, Clove Lakes, I don't even remember the name of it, in Staten Island got the least amount of votes. So they got eliminated off the bat. And so whoever voted for first place for Clove Lakes, their votes don't just get eliminated, right? They don't just get erased. They end up going to their second place votes. So in the primary election, if you sit down, vote candidate John Smith number 1 and candidate Jason number 2. If John Smith gets eliminated, gets the least amount of votes, then your vote's going to number 2. I hope that explained it a little bit better.
So number 2 ends up with the shot of still being in the race.
Right, exactly.
It does. Thank you very much. Got it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And if anyone has any other questions or if they want to see the video, I also have Tiffany's information. You can let me know and send it and forward it. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And at 9:08, I believe we can dismiss for the evening. I know it's been a long day for me, so I'm ready to call it a night. But thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for seeing. Tiffany, thank you again.
All.
And everyone else. And Amber and Jerry, seriously.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stay
Have a
safe,
good
everyone.
evening.
God bless.
Good night
Yes,
now.
stay well.